So good evening. Today's gonna be day 10 of FOP. Um, we're gonna finish off lemonade stand. We pretty much finished coding everything yesterday evening. And then we're just gonna run through the file. We didn't get to uh go to the test cases. So let's do that real quick. And then if you guys have any questions, you guys can. Uh, so after we finished our recording from yesterday, uh, only thing different I did afterwards was I added a main function to my lemonade stand.py in the event I wanted to uh, just run everything in this file, right? So if I would have ran the lemonade stand.py as an individual script, then it would have ran the main function. So we can see here that it used the example that was provided, and it prints it out. It works. And then afterwards, I did run the pi test. Um, it ran all 5 tests, and it gave me an okay. So there was no issues with my code for the most part. At least with the test cases that we got. Um, but besides this, does anybody have any issues with their code when they're running um their test cases? Are they getting like fails? Are you failing any of the test cases that we can, go ahead and share and cover and figure out how we can debug? Or did everyone pass every single test case? So everybody's code is good. No issues. All right. Um, okay, so that's gonna be pretty much, it's gonna mark the end of our classes and objects lesson. Um, if you guys have any further questions involving classes or anything like this, do reach out and I'll try to answer your questions to the best of my ability. But besides that, we're going to move forward with the next lesson, which is going to be reading and writing CSV files. This will be lesson 10. I did update the slides, so you should have access to them. Let me know if you don't, and I will fix that myself. Um, can everybody see the slides? Okay. All right. So lesson 10 is gonna be reading and writing files. So files are, I don't know what this word is, ubiquitous in computing. Having a place to store data that persists and is retrievable is very valuable. Two kinds of files. One will be text files and binary files. The main difference between both these files is one is readable and one isn't, right? So the binary files will be a bunch of code that only the computer will understand. And the text file will be something that you guys will be able to actually be able to decipher and parse through, right? So an example of a binary file is going to be your .jpeg files. These are your pictures, um, and then your text files are what we've been creating, right? So like our app.pys, um, .js files, or HTML files, and whatnot. Reading and writing files. So this is going to be the basic syntax of how to open, read, and write through the different types of files you're going to have. Um, it's going to use the open syntax. Um, so you're going to start by opening the file with the correct path name. So we see here on line 1, they declare a variable called inFile, and then they're going to assign everything that's going to come out of this file. They started with the open function here. They called open, and within the open, you're able to pass it a handful of parameters. The first one is going to be the destination of your file. Um, this is going to be pretty much in the same file where this file is going to be located at, so they didn't have to do any digging on where the location of it was. They're able to just go ahead and type in the name of the file, and then this what it ends with, the type of file that it is. So .txt. You can see here they put it in quotation marks. Don't forget these. And then the next parameter they passed in is going to be an R, right? That's going to allow you to read the file when you open it. There's going to be other methods you can use besides the R. If you want to write into the file, you can use a W one. The W will allow you to actually manipulate that file, but this is essentially the syntax here, and with it, the code says here is they're trying to read through it. So they open it and they read the file, and then they're able to pass the method here called read line. So it's going to read that line for them. They're going to strip the spaces at the end of their lines, and you'll see why that's a reason when we do stuff. They're going to naturally have spaces to make up for whenever a line is done being typed in, it goes into a next line. There's a natural space there, right? So we have to use a dot strip method to remove those spaces, and then they're able to print the line out, right? And now when you open a file in this manner, the same sense in this kind of syntax, right, where you assign it to a variable, you have to manually close it yourself. So here on line 7, we see that we're going to close that file back. And there's other ways we can do it where you won't need to do this manually. But yeah, so they opened the file, they read the first line, they stripped the line, they gave them access to that first line, right? They stripped the spacing, they printed it out, and then they closed the file. Very, very simple, very straightforward. Here on this next slide, they're gonna give you a different syntax, right? This syntax is gonna allow you to close your file automatically. And instead of assigning the action of opening the file to a variable, they start off right off the bat with the with open syntax. This is just going to automatically just open the file. You're not saving it into any kind of variable. The file name is going to be dogs.txt, and they want to read through it. And then you're assigning it some form of a name. This doesn't really matter what you call it. They just decide to call it in file. It's almost like saying for X and something, right? You know, the X, you can name that whatever you want. That's just your variable name, so you're able to call it, right? So they named it something. So with open, the name of the file, the action of what you want to do with that file as in file, and then you're able to work with the variable in file here. So I said for line and in file, they're essentially looping through all the lines in the txt file, and they're printing it out. As they print it, they immediately just strip it. This is here on the right side. You see a snippet of what that file looks like. It's just a basic txt file. If you guys have like a notepad, most of your notepads save your files into txt files, and they have a word here or the names of dogs, breeds, I guess, on every line. All right, so they got Husky, German Shepherd, Chihuahua, Shih Tzu, and Beagle. So as it reads this, that's what it's doing. We're looping through every single line for a line and in file, right? And then we're going to print every single line. But as we print it, we want to strip that spacing that comes afterwards. So they want to remove all that space, so they use the dot strip method, and that remove any kind of weirdness, so you can see it visually in this manner. You'll see if you don't do the dot strip method, you're going to get some weird functionality. So what if you get a file that's not there? So here they use the try and accept block, open up the txt file, reading it, or same code snippet that I used before, and you're able to customize pretty much what you want to, if you want to have an error, right? So they say accept, so file not found error. So they caught this error, and if it catches this error, we want to print this specific item or string, I guess, right? The file was not found. So you're able to do that. This is the error that you'll receive if the file doesn't exist. I do believe, if I'm correct, last time I taught this class, I did this. It created that file anyway, so we'll test that out today. But if the file doesn't exist, I'm pretty sure it creates it. Let's write to a file. So similar syntax to reading a file, except we use the parameter W. So as mentioned before, you have other ways of manipulating your your file, and one of them is the W. And this will allow you to actually write inside of that TXT file without manually opening it. You see that here, they in the code, right? In their Python file they created, or whatever file they used, they assigned a list onto cat list, right? Different breeds of cats. They went through the regular syntax for opening a file automatically so that it closes on its own. So with open, they put the name of the file they're trying to manipulate with the W to allow them to be able to actually make changes to it. They named it out file, and then they're looping through the cat list, right? So this one, you see here, they say for cat in cat list. They didn't say for cat in out file. They're not looping through the file. They're looping through the list. And then as they loop through it, they're writing in there. They call the name of the file, whatever they decide to call it. And they have this method here called .write, which will allow you to manipulate the information inside your text file. And within the write parentheses, you're able to put whatever you want to write in there. They're grabbing the variable cat, putting it in there, and they're concatenating it with a new line symbol here, right? So just like before, as we read through the files, and they're grabbing every single line, they had to strip the space or that line that /n off the text file. If we want to add stuff in there so it fits in the same format that it's already written, we want to add that new line parameter on there so it automatically goes into the next line. If you don't, then it's going to be back to back to back on the very same line. And that's how you prevent that on line 5 here. You add that /n, and that will allow you to go into the next line in your TXT file. Everything in a file is a string. So you must convert all integers floats to strings before writing them to a file. Make sure to add a new line character to the end of it so each number is on a separate line. So here, they opened up a TXT file and they want to write inside of it. Assigned it to the variable out file temporarily so they can actually work with it. And then they did a regular for loop, right? A for loop in the range of 10. And then they're going to write the number in there. And you see here, they convert it into a string because our code automatically starts it when it's working with the range. It starts as an integer. But we want to use it as a string, convert it so we can add it into our text file. And they're still adding that /n afterwards so they can go on to the next line. If not, then it's going to be side by side instead of on its individual line. Before I continue going, any questions? None at all. You guys are getting this better than I expected.
Hey, Roger, quick question on the two formats that you showed. Is there a particular reason you would want to, like, other than forgetting to close it, to use the automatic?
Besides that, no. It's personal preference, but most people will use this method to be honest, the with open one. It's just easier. So you'll probably end up using that yourself and you'll find that it's just easier to use. Anybody else? Awesome. JSON. So JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. Although this format came from JavaScript, it's actually a language independent and it's easy to be converted, right? So you can use it with different stuff. You're able to convert this to Python if you wanted to. This format allows you to exchange data between different computer languages. Pay attention because you will be seeing a lot of this notation. You will be using this as well in the immersive program. So keep this in mind. Write and read JSON, right? So the methods you're going to be using to write in JSON, they come from a module in Python, and you're going to have to import it yourself. So you see here, excuse me, I burped. On line 2, they import the JSON module, so you're able to convert your Python code to JSON. The code is still the same as you saw earlier. They have a list here called cat list with different breeds. they're opening a JSON file. See, this one's different. They're opening a JSON file. So instead of writing to a TXT file, now we're writing to a JSON file with the W. So we know we want to write inside of it as out file. And now what we're going to do, we want to use the method called dump, right? And dump will allow us to put all that information inside of Catalyst. I'm sorry, inside of the out file. My bad. We're able to convert it. And then here we go to line 9 with open. They did the same thing here, but now we're reading. They're gonna read through the file, and they're going to load the stuff from that file and assign it to this variable called restored list. So essentially they're adding it to it, and then they're accessing it and grabbing the information again, and now assigning it to a variable assigned to restored list.
Question.
Answer.
So yeah, sorry. So with that dump, right, when you're dumping cat list into the out file, how is that being written into out file? Like, because I see you don't have the new line break like we did in the previous examples. Would it just literally like transcribe it as it is in this Python document straight into the JSON file, or what will that look like?
That's part of the JSON module, right? It's a method, so it converts it into JSON, right? So you don't have to say anything specific. It's gonna grab this and using the dump method, it's gonna grab whatever's in it and convert it into JSON code, and you'll see it in action once we actually use it in a bit. All right, it's almost like it's like a built-in method into JSON module. Does that make sense? It's like using the min or max methods. You don't even know how it's doing it, but it does it.
Yep, I got you. Thank you.
No problem. Anybody else? Awesome. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move forward. Okay. We're going to do a student practice. It's going to be rewrite.py. It's going to be converting Python objects using the json.dump method to be able to convert it into a JSON format and save it into a text file. I'll give you guys a chance to try it yourself before we work on it together. So time is going to be 5:50. Let's take 15 minutes. So we'll come back at 6:05. I'm not going to break you up into your rooms. We'll just do it here. So go ahead and give that a try. All right. So readwrite.py. There's two problems on the readwrite.py. I see some messages in the chat. My bad. Lesson 10 is linked to lesson 9 PowerPoint. Okay. How this time I don't get a notification for the chat, so please stop me in my tracks and like just interrupt me and say something with your voice, because I'll probably miss your messages. But let's check it out. I'm sorry for the slides. A lengthy FP schedule. Yeah. Okay. Give me a second then. I'll get you the guys the slides real quick. Were you guys able to do the lesson 10 one or no? I mean, do you guys need the slide to do it? Okay, we'll do the. Yeah, so we'll do this together. To give you guys the opportunity, since I don't know if you guys were able to complete it with the slides. I understand it's a very new concept. So the readwrite.py came with two different problems. Write code that opens a file named mary.txt. So we didn't give you the nursery rhyme, right? I had to Google it myself. You can either save it all to string. I saved it into a list for me to better visualize it. And then each line that I had, I just assigned to the first index or its individual index, correct? That way I can just make it easier for you guys to visualize this. So as mentioned before, we're going to start our syntax with the with open syntax. So with open and open close parentheses. And in here, I'm going to give it the name of my txt file. Now, when you write, when you use the W, the write method in your parameters, it's going to create that txt file for you. But if you don't have it and you use the read method, you're gonna get an error, right? So you can see here of where I'm located. We don't have a mary.txt file. So and you'll see this work. I'll do mary.txt into the type of file I'm looking for, and then what I want to do with it, I want to write in this bad boy, and I'm gonna say as Mary file. That's what I'm just gonna call it, as my Mary file. And then I can start working with it. So I'm going to loop through that list. So for line in a nursery rhyme list, I'm going to call upon Mary file dot write. I'm gonna grab the file, right? I assigned it to the Mary file variable, and I'm gonna use the dot write method to allow me to write inside of it. And I'm going to pass it the line. Now, if I do it without the backward slash, we're gonna see that functionality and how that works. So I run my .py. We see on the left side, it created my mary.txt file, and we can open that bad boy up. And now we see that it wrote into it. But after each line, we see that it's all conjoined together. It's all in one line, but that's not the functionality I wanted. It looks weird, right? I wanted every single line of this nursery rhyme to be on an individual line. So I need to be a little bit more deliberate of how I'm going to write in there. So I'm going to do plus, right? I'm doing this string concatenation, and then I'm going to pass the backward slash n, which is the syntax for a new line, right? I don't know if you guys are familiar with this during the intro to coding. This is some of the stuff that you can do, right? Using the backward slash and the n tells your code that you want to start a new line. So adding that to your string will essentially start a new line. We can go ahead and run that file again, and it's going to write into our mary.txt file. and it did exactly what I wanted, right? It added a nursery rhyme, and after every line, it adds that backward slash n, therefore letting my txt file know that I want to go into the new line, right? And that's how that works. Okay. So yeah, that's how the Mary.txt problem gets taken care of. Now let's look at number 2. I went ahead and just made the dictionary. This is probably the most annoying part, is trying to write this dictionary in here. So here's my name dictionary with key value pairs, with the numbers being the key and the name being uh, the names being the values, right? So we can go ahead and start the same syntax as we did before. Let me just go ahead and comment this out. I don't want weird items. And this is gonna be in JSON format, right? So we want to write this dictionary to a JSON file and read it as well. So we're going to import JSON, and that's going to give us access. If you look here on the right side, it tells us the different stuff that it comes with. It can give us access to different methods, and one of them being the JSON that dumps, which is pretty cool. That's the one we're gonna be using. Let's check this out. Go to definition, and it gives us the different stuff that it comes with. All right, we're gonna be using the JSON dumps. It takes a dictionary and essentially converts it into JSON. We can do as like pre-printing, so it'll print it. It can print out nicely well as well. If we wanted to. We can sort stuff in there, so it has sort methods. We have optional parameters as well. You can even indent it, right? So we can try that out in a second as well. We have the load methods, and this is how you can find out what some of these modules do. You can just right click on that module you're importing, and you can go to it, and it'll open up the documentation for it. And as we see here, this is pretty much what we consider the under the hood of stuff, and it's a class, right? It's like methods and functions of stuff, right? They use other different items as well, but they're essentially they're defining functions here, right? And they have the documentation as well to allow us to understand what it does. And that's just a nice little thing you can use. But without getting sidetracked, let's get straight back into it. We're going to do with open, and then we're going to read this file. So I created a file on the left side. We have names.txt. Let me go ahead and erase that. All right, so it's empty. And then I'm going to type in the name of the file I'm trying to use. And then I'm gonna read. Oh, my bad. I want to write in this bad boy actually. Right, I wanna dump the JSON stuff. As names file. And we're going to do JSON dot dump. We're going to dump the name dictionary. And then where do we want to dump it? It's going to take a parameter. We want to dump it into our names file. That's what we assigned it. We assigned it to the variable names file. And we should be able to run that. And if we look at our names.txt, it's in here. But it's not as pretty as we wanted to. Earlier, we did see there was a method of actually indenting that. Let's see if we can make that work. We can do comma indent is equal to 1. I wonder if that's actually going to make it look pretty. And wow, it does, right? So we were able to indent our dictionary, and it makes it a little bit more readable. So it's not in all one line, right? And how did I figure that out? By reading the code of it, right? So we have, where did I find it? the coding JSON pretty printing, right? So pretty printing is pretty much formatting your JSON into a format that it makes it nice and pretty and readable. And here's where I saw the syntax for it. They use a .dumps method. They took a dictionary. The second item it gave it says sort equals underscore keys was true. I don't know exactly what this is. But the second one is essentially where we wanted to dump our code into. And then the indent one, that's kind of what gave me the hint to try this out. And it did it like this, right? So that's nice, pretty looking code. And then if this was nested information, there would be, it would come in handy. So let's say if this is a dictionary of dictionary, let's say number 3 has a value of let's see. Okay. Let's say instead of number 3 having a name as a value, we assign it another dictionary. It's pretty much a dictionary inside dictionary, right? How would that look? Let's run that names.txt. It's in here, but what if we want to format it, make it a little bit more pretty? We can try and do that. Let's see if we can change the indent. Let's indent it twice. That way it goes deeper into our file. Did it do it? I don't see. It did. It did it twice. But it didn't do as much as I would like it to have done. I wonder if we do 4. Will it make it more noticeable? Yeah, it did. It did it 4 times. We can see it's a dictionary, and inside this dictionary line, the key value pair for 3, it's a value of 3, and then it's a key of 3 with a value of a dictionary itself. And that's why print printing is helpful, because we're able to visualize this a little bit more because we have a dictionary assigned as a value inside of a dictionary. And when you start working with like the and you see it too, I'm pretty sure you guys saw it when working with the APIs and making some of these API calls. It's a little difficult trying to read what the data was giving you, but the data you're getting back were essentially it was a JSON format, right? It was dictionaries inside dictionaries, and that's why that pretty printing kind of helped. Anyways, that's enough of a detour. We'll keep it like this. Now we were able to see there, but let's use the load method. So we're gonna do with open, same thing like we did before, names.txt. We're going to read it this time. Oh, my apologies. I entered into the terminal. Instead of the dump method, we want to read what's inside of it because we know there's stuff inside of our names.txt file. We want to read a JSON in there, right? So instead of actually writing stuff in there, we know that this specific file we're going to be working with already has JSON in there, and I'm going to read it. So we would say JSON or loaded JSON. So we know it's like going to be our loaded data. We're going to use a JSON.loads. Is it load or load? We'll do load. We're gonna do load, and we should be able to do names file. And then after we load that JSON file, we can do print loaded JSON. Oh, my bad. Hang on. Where am I? There you go. Sorry, it took me out of my location. I just got so many files, I don't even know where I'm at. Okay, so yeah, I printed the loaded JSON. whenever we loaded it into this variable, it converted into a readable Python dictionary, and I'm able to print it out into my console. What if I were to do? If I were just to assign it, uh, it'd be in a weird wrapper. It's not decoded. That JSON.loads allow us to read it, right? And that's pretty much the first assignment. All right, so looking at the chat, I see someone here. Okay. So yeah, so this takes care of the first assignment. The next assignment is going to be, I believe, is file share. I close my slides. It's gonna be file share. So time is 6:24. Come back at 6:34, and then we'll tackle that one next. Okay. Let's go ahead and return. So after our break, I give you guys the assignment for file sum.py. We're gonna go ahead and code that together. So looking at the README, we're gonna write a function named file sum, and as a parameter, it's gonna take the name of a text file that contains a list of numbers, 1 to a line, like this, and we see here 6 numbers, some integers, some floats, some positive, some negative. The function should sum the values in the file and write the sum, just a number, to a text file named sum.txt. If the function can't find the file containing a list of numbers, throw a file not found error. Who wants to take a crack at it?
I can.
All right, awesome. Let's see it, Donnie.
All right, I'm almost done. I just gotta redo the last part.
Yeah, go ahead,
Wait,
if you don't mind, talk us through the code that you do have right now and what each line is doing.
okay. All right. So starting off with the README, write a function named file sum takes that takes as a parameter the name of a text file that contains a list of numbers. Da da da. So I started out by defining file sum, the function, and then we're gonna pass in a parameter, in this case text file. And then I made my own text file and just passed in the numbers, like the example numbers. And then I initiated a total of 0 and then started reading the text file that I made with the numbers. And so with open text file, which obviously will be what we passed in. So passing down here is num.text because that's the name of the text file. And then read as in file. And then basically for each number, I'm adding that to the total. And I threw float in front of it because numbers are stored as strings in the text file. So you got to convert it back to a number. And then function should sum the values in the file and write the sum, just that number, to a text file named sum.text. If the function can't find the file containing a list of numbers, throw a file not found error. So we're going to throw sum.text as right as the out file. And then I can't remember in Python, I haven't looked it up, but basically take the total, convert it to a string, and that will write it to the sum text file. And then I just have to add the error. I think you're muted or my headset's messed up.
My apologies. Yeah, I was muted. Good stuff. You got most of it for the most part. On line 8, you said you don't remember for Python. It's just gonna be the str wrapper around it. Same concept you use for the float, but it's gonna be str. So that should get rid of that error you have there, that type error. It wrote it in there. Yep, there you go. So you're getting the correct answer. The last thing you need is going to be the file not found error. And how will we do that? Do you have anything in mind?
They can try block.
Yeah, we can use the try and except block, right? So the code we have here from line 3 to 8 could be in our try block. And then we can we can make an except. And in the except block, we're gonna put the file not found error syntax. So it's gonna try lines 4 to 9, except right, and then there on line 10, we're gonna put except file not found error, right? So typically we do the try colon or except colon, right? But here except is only gonna happen if a file not found error, like this will only run if this error is found. And we don't have to do crazy parentheses there. We would just do except file not found error colon. So it's going to grab that error, and if it grabs that error, you want to print something. We're going to go to the next line. We can just do print. So this will run. We run into the file not found error. We can do print. We'll do some string interpolation. We can say the file, and then we can put curly brackets and whatever you call your text file. I believe. Yep, on line 1, you see the parameter you gave it text file. In the event that file doesn't exist, we can put the file and then curly brackets text file was not found. Yeah, we can do that. So that should work for our try and except block. Yeah, not bad. So try that. And then I want you to do it again, run that function and see if you can do it with the wrong text file. See if we get that error. I created cool. Try that again, but this time put nums instead of num. Call the file differently. Awesome. Yeah, that's sweet. Okay, yeah, it works. Awesome. Thank you for the demonstration, Donnie. The next one is going to be I think the noble data one. Yeah, next one will be the noble data dot py. Pretty much all today is going to be working on the small assignments, game practice on how to open writing CSV files. So go ahead and take the next 15 minutes for noble data. Time is 6:52. Let's come back at 7:06, 7:07. I'm done. Yeah, 7:07. All right. We're gonna go ahead and attempt the noble data.py. All right. Were you guys able to finish? Did anyone finish at all? Awesome. Okay. Let's give it a try. So we're gonna have to import the JSON module. So the very top import JSON. which will give us access to the dumps and load method. And we're going to run a class named Noble Data. And it's going to read our JSON file and allow the user to search that data. So we're going to start a class called Noble Data. And we're going to define our init method, which is going to initialize our class. And the init method is going to read the file and store it in whatever data member or members you prefer. Any data member of the Noble Data class must be private. So it shouldn't take any argument. But it will have one data member. Sorry, my D key fell off. My laptop's broken. Get it back in place. All right. Okay. So we're gonna do in our init method, we can do with open. And then we're gonna open up our JSON file. It's gonna be, you can see on my left, it's gonna be nobles.json. And I'm gonna read through it so I can access the item. I'm gonna say as noble file. That opens it up, and then I'm going to assign it to my data member. So self._noble data is equal to JSON.load, and I'll pass it the noble file. Okay. And that should initialize the item or the entire file, right? Let's go ahead and create our next method, which is going to be a method named search noble. We're going to define it search noble. It'll take in self, and it's going to take two other parameters, a year and a category. But we're going to take it one step at a time. I want to make sure I can visualize my data, so I'm just going to keep it empty, and I'm going to return self._noble data. It's almost like a getter method. I just want to make sure I can see my my information. I'm gonna say noble data is going to equal, and I'm going to instantiate my class, very similar to the README here on the right on line 11 and 12. So noble data, it won't take any arguments. And then I'm gonna call that method they have there, search noble, and I have it set up so it doesn't take any arguments. But I want to print it out so I can see the data, make sure it's working, and I'm able to fetch all that JSON goodness. I'm going to call my noble data.py, and we see here it prints it out exactly what we're looking for. It's working, so it's doing what we want. Now this method, the search noble method, should be able to take in two data members. I thought it was two parameters, a year and a category, and it's going to return a sorted list in normal English dictionary order of the surnames for the winners in that category for that year. A lot to take in at first glance, right? So let's take it one step at a time, mainly because I get very confused with stuff like this. So let's look at our JSON file. It's not a text file, it's a JSON file. And JSON file just holds JSON data, and all JSON data essentially is an object, is what we call it in JavaScript, right? So with the open and closed curly brackets, essentially a quote unquote dictionary, right? That's all our JSON files ever will be. And they hold a huge dictionary with one key value pair at the surface we see here, with the key being prizes, and the value is a list, or in this situation, I guess it would be an array, right? Or a list of other objects, right? So it's in a list format, and this list, the first index right here, we can see it. That's gonna be index 0. This seems to be an index 1, and that seems to be the trend here, that it's a list of objects, and they all seem to have the same key value pair, year, category, and Loretz, I believe is how you pronounce that. We scroll down year category Loretz, year category Loretz. Okay, that seems to be across the board the same. So it's an object with key value pairs of year category and Loretz. Here's where we can find the, compare the parameters or arguments that are being passed into our search noble method, and we can compare it here to verify it's the right one we're looking for. And if it is, then we're able to use that specific index data, and it will go into the Loretz key value pair, which its value holds a list of other objects, and this object holds the actual prize winner, right? So we see here we have key value pairs for ID, first name, surname, the motivation for it, and it says shares 3. I'm assuming it's shared between other members, so we can, just by grabbing this information, we know that he is one of the 3 people that holds this economic award during this year. Okay, and that's how you read the JSON information. And I split it up in steps by step by step to make sure that you can understand this, because it's a little intimidating at first if you're new to looking at nested objects, and it can get very confusing. But that's kind of how you split it up, right? And you have to take it step by step, every single step of the way. So let's get back to our search noble. We can slowly start adding stuff to it. It's going to take in a year and a category, right? And one thing that we know is that it's going to be in string format in our JSON, right? So what is the probability that whenever someone puts in a year, it's going to be it's going to be an integer and not a string. So we can do some formatting prior to even using our item. So we can say year is equal to string year. That way, when they input their year into our class, or our method, it doesn't mess it up, right? And then for the category, in the event they are to capitalize it, we can go ahead and format that right off the bat. Category dot lower, and that's going to make it into lowercase, right? So if we look at the right side, our categories are all in lowercase. So we want to make sure our information is formatted so it doesn't mess it up or give us any errors. This will come into play once you guys start building your own backend and you're trying to access your databases, and you have different items. You're gonna want to format stuff. So this is something to kind of get used to. Make sure that everything is formatted, so you're able to access your data effectively. And now that it's formatted, we can start parsing through all this data. So we're going to want to loop through the list and this value of prizes. And to access that value, we're going to have to grab the self._noble data member that we have, right? So it's going to be self._noble data. And to access that information, we need to use our bracket notation. So it'll be prizes. We know that the key is going to be prizes, and it holds a value, which is a list. So we can loop through that. So we can say for prize in self._noble data prizes. That essentially it starts a for loop of this list, right? And we grab that list by calling the key prizes, right? Everyone still with me? That gives us access to that list. Now we're looping through it, and now we can do some checking, right? We can say if price, because now we have objects. So as it loops through this list, we're holding on to objects. So now we grab the first item. This is an entire object. So price, we know it's going to be an object. So we can use bracket notation on price. We can say if price, and we want to check the year, is equal to the year we're looking for, so if it's equal to the year, and if price category is equal to our category we're looking for, then we want to do something, right? So going back to that README, a method, right, that's going to take a parameter of a year in a category, and it searches for the winner, right, that shares that similar year and category. So we want to make sure it meets both these qualifications, and if so, we want to do something with it, right? So once we find a specific year and category that matches to the arguments that are being passed, then we want to go inside of its awards and check it, right? So now that we're in here, we found the right one. Let's say we're looking for specifically the year 2022 in chemistry, right? We're looking for this year and the chemistry awards. Now we can go inside of this bad boy. So it checks out. This is the object we're looking for. So we want to loop through now the contenders or the awardees and grab specific information, correct? So we'll do that. We can say for awardee in prize, and it's gonna be Loretz. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. For awardee in prize Loretz, and then we're gonna want to grab the surname, right? And we're gonna want to use that data. And how do we want to return that? We want to return that in a sorted list, right? A sorted list in normal English dictionary order of the surnames. So too easy. So we're gonna have to declare a list somewhere. So let's do that before we even begin looping through it. We can do list of surnames is equal to open and close brackets. And if we have it, then we want to grab awardee, or we want to append it. So how do we append stuff? We call the list that we want to append stuff to dot append. And then now we can grab that specific object, right? So because it's a list of objects, we're gonna grab the very first one. So that awardee, use the bracket notation. We want to grab surname. And then after we grab surname, we're just gonna append it, right? Do we need any specific formatting? Let's look at it. So surname looks to all be capitalized. Oh, yeah, this should essentially work. Let's go ahead and return our list of surnames. Let's just look at it. Let's do the very first one. We can do 2022 and chemistry. Three were given. Line 21, search Noble. Oh, my apologies. I put this in the wrong one. There we go. Okay, so I return Bertozzi, Meldo, and Sharp list. Is that sorted? BM. That is. What if it's nuts? BDD. G R M. So not all these are sorted. So what we can do is when we return it, I think we can do sorted here. Just in case, we'll go ahead and do sorted or a list of surnames dots is equal to sorted list of surnames. And that should work. What example did we get here? 2001, and he did into string right off the bat. But we already encountered for that. You know, we took that into consideration. Economics. Well, I don't have an answer here. Anyways, for those of you guys coding along, or those of you that finished, is this what you guys got in return, or did anyone receive anything different?
Yeah, I'm good. I just needed a little help with accessing the nested data, but that makes sense now.
Well, awesome. Then I'm really glad that we did take it step by step with all this JSON data. I know it can be very confusing and overwhelming trying to see all this information. Sometimes it helps to talk through it, right? I don't know if you guys remember the first week of FOP we discussed having like a rubber ducky to talk to, or just talk to yourself if that helps of what you're doing and what you're looking at. Uh, it's easy to get lost in all this information, and you see it's a lot. It's 10,000 lines of code and it's nested, and you don't know if there's an issue. It's gonna take some while to look through it and decipher, but it's honestly just it looks more intimidating than it actually is, right? It's you want to break it off in small bits and pieces that you can chew. And I think that should conclude the Noble data. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, awesome. Yeah, so time's gonna be 7:32. Just come back at 7:42. Take a 10-minute break before we go into the last hour of the night. I see Adrian said accessing the data. Yeah, that's probably one of the hardest parts of this. So yeah, so we're going to code this out. I will have a reference for my answer key because it just get very confusing with all this data. So I just give you a disclaimer on that. But we'll get through it quickly because we only have like 30 minutes left for today. Unfortunately, we didn't get to the last assignment. This one, it's just formatting. There's some different edge cases you have to take into consideration. So we'll talk about those today. Do you guys see my code? Okay. Let me move this over and then SAT over here. Okay. All right, so for this project, we're going to import JSON. So we're gonna go ahead and import JSON on the very top because we're gonna need the loads function that comes with it so we can decipher the JSON data. And we're gonna create our class SAT data. We're gonna define the init method. Start with self. And it's gonna read a JSON file and it's gonna write the data to a text file in CSV format. So I mentioned it to some of you guys. I don't remember if I mentioned it during the actual presentation of the slides, but CSV stands for comma separated values. It's in the name, so that's pretty much how they're built, right? So it's just gonna be a text file with different values separated by comma. So for those of you that were confused, I know some of y'all didn't understand how to build a CSV file or how to format it. It's just different items or values separated by commas. Typically, our CSV files do have some form of a header, which is found on line 1, that's going to tell the user or the programmer how the data is separated, right? And that can be found at the top. So it's you have to take that into consideration when building the CSV file. So yeah, we're gonna do that, and then we have to format the data that we get, right? So CSV is a very simple format, just comma separating columns and new line separating rows. You can see that on the SAT College Board example. The first line is the headers, right? It takes a DBN, school name, and so on and so forth. And then after line 1 is where our data really begins. But let's look at here on line 6. This is something that needs to be taken into account, right? What about the data that we get back that has nothing in it, right? Because that's going to be a possibility. And we see here when we highlight one of them, it highlights all of them for me. We have multiple lines that are going to return no data for those fields. So that's something we have to take into account. And it's color coded. I think this is my extension that I have that has a color coded for me this well. I don't know if you guys do, but color coded so you can see the difference of the values. So back to the README. The init method is going to read the file and store it in whatever data member we prefer. Any data member of the SAT class must be private. So that means we're going to open up our JSON file here, and we're going to format it in our init method, right? So it's going to take a JSON file as an argument. So we'll just go ahead and call this a JSON file. And then we're going to start our opening with open. In the init method, we're going to do JSON underscore file. We're going to read this bad boy, and we're going to assign it as file. And then we're going to do all data. We're going to grab all the data. And we're going to do JSON dot load the file. All right, it's going to bring all that JSON data we have in SAT.json and just assign it to the all data variable. And then afterwards, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an empty variable called formatted SAT data. It's going to be an empty dictionary. This is where I'm going to put the data that has been formatted into our CSV. So I'm going to do a for loop for row in all data. And then I'm going to use bracket notation to access the data that's in the key data. So where am I getting this information from? Okay, so going to our SAT.json, right? This is going to be all assigned to my variable all data on line 7. And I'm going to want to loop through it. I'm able to do that with a very basic for loop. And I'm accessing the bracket notation method using data in my bracket. Why? Well, when looking at the data, it's a JSON file, so obviously it's in an object. And the top level data we have here is one of them is going to be meta, right? So that's going to be one of the very top levels. It's going to take some digging until we find something. You use these lines as reference, right? So the top level is going to be this line right here. And I'm going to scroll through my JSON data until I find something appear in the same column to see if there's anything at the same level. You can scroll, and eventually I will run into something. We see here that the next item is data. And you can continue scrolling through if you want to. I believe there's only 2 top level keys and everything else is just raw information. But now I know what my top level is. It's going to be meta and data. You can parse through the meta information, but pretty much most of it's going to be useless to you. It's telling you what the columns are. So if we look through it, right, it's giving you basic information. It doesn't really apply to you, like publication dates, view count, how many times it's been viewed, and stuff like that. Very, items that it doesn't really matter to you. And then we get to the next level below that, which is an approvals. It's a list. And here we start breaking stuff up. There's another one called columns inside of that. And in columns, it tells us what the columns of our CSV file is going to be. One is SID, ID, position, created at, created meta, updated at, and it keeps going down until you reach DBN, right? So if you read through this, you will end up finding out that this columns key value section is showing you how our data is actually going to be broken down to, and what every column is going to be. So we know that it's going to get to DBN. After DBN, it goes into school name. So we know that's going to be school name. It's going to be one header, and then number of test takers, and just it keeps going, right? And it just tells you what those columns are. So that's what all that other information in the meta is. But we don't care for that really. We only want our data. So we're going to go to the data key. We're going to grab its values. We want to loop through the value assigned to the key data. We see it's a list. And inside this list, at index 0, we have another list. So it's a list of lists, right? So we're gonna have to loop through it, and then we're gonna have to loop through that list. It's unfortunate. I know Kara mentioned it, like it sucks. I have to do nested for loops, but that's the reality of the beast, right? But I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna loop through that data, and I'm gonna grab the different list of items, and I'm gonna do. I'm gonna create a variable called formatted row, right? And this formatted row is where I'm going to input the data that I am receiving from the JSON file, and I'm going to format it here, right? I'm going to open and close parentheses. I'm going to put comma, space, and then I'm going to do dot join. Why? Because it's a list. And the cool thing about lists is that you're able to grab everything in the list and pass it the dot join method, and it'll actually join everything for you. And that can be seen here. We can go to, I'll show you online, and we go to like the W3 website. We can go to like lists. We can check join or list, join list. This isn't what I'm looking for. Let's go to list methods. Let's see, where can I find it? I want to show you where I can get the list method. Python.join. Let's see if I can find it for you. So here's the dot join methods for strings, but it works on other stuff too, right? So let's see if I can find you a prime example. Here's one, right? So here's a tuple one. It has a tuple with 3 items into a tuple, and it's going to create a variable called x, and it's going to assign it whatever it receives back from the tuple joined together. And the way that it works, right? You're going to declare what you want to join it with, right? In parentheses. I'm sorry, or in quotation marks. So whatever you want to join it with, you're going to declare it within quotation marks, and then you'll call the method dot join, and you'll pass it whatever you want to join together. And we can put try yourself, and we see here the result of that. It takes all 3 variables assigned into the tuple, and it joins them together using the hashtag method. And that works with lists as well, right? And that's just going to come with practice and seeing what methods you have at your disposal. Y is equal to dot join. My keyboard sucks, bro. My list. And then we can print that bad boy down here. And we run it, and it's going to return to us. Okay, you don't like that? Because they're numbers. Jesus Christ. Right, so it joins strings together, and we see here that it joined them together. I didn't declare anything within the quotation marks, so therefore it just joined it with nothing between it. So no spaces. We can do comma space, and it will join it with the comma spaces after every item. And then we see that here being declared. And that's what I'm doing here in my code. I'm going to join it together using the dot join method, and using the comma space to be able to format it in the same format that CSVs are made. Right, so we can do the open close parentheses, and we'll put a comma space between every single member in our list. That's going to allow us to create that CSV format. And then in our join, we're going to pass it what you want to join together. The first item I'm going to want to join is going to be the DNB, right? So if we look at the SAT College Board, this is going to be the example we're reaching for. We want to get a the DBN, school name, number of test takers, and so on and so forth. So this is going to be the DBN followed by the school name. So we're gonna look at our list. It's gonna be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's gonna be on index 8. So I want to grab what's on index 8 to be the first item. So it's gonna be row 8, right? Don't get confused with the name row. That's just what I'm calling it as I'm looping through my list. All right, so hopefully that doesn't confuse you too much. So row 8, and then I'm gonna do row 9. And here is where it's gonna get a little tricky, right? We have, you can essentially just do row 8, row 9, and so row 10, so on and so forth. But on my code, I took care of the edge cases. And the edge case is the fact that you might receive none as an input on the DBN. So I did some comprehension here, and I opened it up, and within this comprehension I did an empty string if whatever is in row 10 is equal to none, and if it doesn't equal none, what I did was else string, they put extra space. Whoa. I think I did it right. It's very confusing with this row string. I think I need. Yeah, okay. Should do this. So essentially what I did here is I did some like comprehension, almost like when you do like do this if this or do that else. It's like an if else statement written in one line. So what I'm saying here is, hey, for row 10, I want you to give me an empty string if what's in row 10 is equal to none. If it doesn't equal none, I want you to give me what's actually in there, right? And that's going to take care of my edge cases where I'm going to get feedback on my SAT college board of these empty strings, right? If not, what this is going to give me is going to return to me none. And we're going to have, essentially in here, we're going to have this. And that's not what I want. I'm trying to give you empty feedback, right? Because that's how the CSV is built. This is actually my code here, but we're going to take this real quick because there's a lot to copy. And I don't got that time. All right. So that's going to return to me a formatted row. Okay. So it's going to take a little work to actually get it to how you want to, but it does what I want. If you didn't want to take care of the none, then you can just do row 10, row 11, row 12, row 13. It keeps it simple, but it will return to you none. But I took care of those empty spaces, right? So whatever you want to do, just know that this is an option of doing. All right, you can do this comprehension here within the line, and it will format it for you. Is everyone still with me? Did I lose anybody at this part? Okay. All right, awesome. So that took care of my formatted row. And now, what I do is I assign that to my formatted SAT data, right? So within the for loop, I'm going to go to formatted SAT data. The key is going to be row, let's see. How do I want to save this? I'll save it using the DBN. So I can save my SAT data using the row 8, the DBN, as the key, which will allow me to access it easier. Because if we look down here, right, if we look at the assignment, the save as CSV should be able to take in a list of DBNs, right? And within these lists of DBNs, I should be able to find the information I'm looking for. So an easy way to locate this information will be to save the DBNs as a key to be able to access it more efficiently So when I save it to my formatted SAT data, I'm gonna give the key the row 8, which is gonna be the DBN, and the value is gonna be the entire formatted row. Cool, right? Still with me? And now after I do that, once my for loop is complete, all my data should be properly formatted to how a CSV file should be. So I can do self dot underscore data is equal to formatted SAT data. Right? Is everyone still with me? Awesome. So now it is properly formatted. That's going to be my init method. So right off the bat, the moment I instantiate this SAT data class and I pass it my JSON file, it should just format it into how the JSON, into how the CSV file is supposed to be read. So I don't have to do any more weird logic like that. I can come down here and I can create my method saved as CSV. It's going to take self like every other method, and I'm going to pass it the variable dbn list, right? If we go back to the assignment, we're going to read here that we need to create a method named save as CSV. It's going to take as a parameter a list of dbn's distinct burial numbers, and it saves a CSV file that looks like the SAT College Board CSV file, but with only the rows that correspond to the dbns in the list, and also the row of column headers. Now that's something we haven't done yet. So we're going to do that here. With open, we're going to do dbns. Well, actually, we don't. Yeah, we can. Or should we just pass it the? We should be with dbn to the list. No, we want to open a new CSV. So it's going to be dbn.csv. Right. So when reading stuff, it's going to give you an error, right? But as we saw earlier, we can use a W to write, and it will create that DBN for us, that CSV for us. And then we can do as out file, because this is what we wanted to return. So it's going to be out. So with open, we're going to open up a CSV called dbn.csv, and we're going to write into it. And we're going to do out file, because that's what we assigned it to, .write. And here, we're going to write right off the bat what the header should be. And it should be, I'm not going to take time writing this because I don't have too much time. We're going to write what the header should be, right? It's going to be a DBN first, followed by school name, number of test takers, critical, reading mean, mathematics mean, and then the writing mean. And that will, right off the bat, create that header for us. We don't have to do no crazy logic. And we could just go ahead and actually grab what we want. So we'll do for dbn and dbn list. We're going to loop through the list that's being passed as an argument, and then we're going to check if that is in our data. If dbn is in self dot underscore data, we're going to write it into our new CSV file, right? So how are we going to do that? We're going to take the self dot underscore data. We're going to grab that DBN, and we know we assigned it the DBN as a key, so we're able to use bracket notation to find the DBN we're looking for, thanks to the way that we set it up. And then we're going to do plus /n to compensate for every line, and then we can just return, right? And we should be good to go. Now, we should be able to copy and paste the example. Line 25 is going to instantiate the class SAT data. This is going to be our list of DBNs, and then we passed it the save as CSV method to it. Let's go ahead and do Python SAT data.py. Oh, it's missing one parameter. It's missing a JSON file into SAT data. And that's gonna be the SAT .json, I believe. My brain's a mush, bro. We're gonna pass it that JSON file. And it ran through. We see here on the left side, it creates my CSV. We open it, and it gives us what we're looking for, right? Line 1 is going to be the header that we declare, and then it gives us our 4. Now, let's say we want an item that doesn't have stuff in it. Let's go ahead and copy that. And we can add it to our list and see how that works. It runs my file, and we see here on line 6, it found that item in our CSV file, and it compensated for the fact that there was nothing there. For those of you that didn't do that, we can actually just go ahead and check this out. It's going to take a little legwork, but I think it's important to see what it has. In here, so we can do row 8, row 9, 10. How many rows is it? Someone?
13.
Thank you. Row 12 and row 13. If we did it this way without doing that list comprehension, expected string instance none type found, right? So it gave us an error. It didn't even return to us none. It gave us an error. Why? Because it ran into an item in our CSV file that had no information in there. It was none. So that is the importance of checking for those edge cases, right? So that's what I did here between line 10 and 13. I'm not gonna lie to you, this actually took me longer to to create than I am proud of when I was doing it on my own. So it's okay if you don't understand it right off the bat, but essentially, you're doing some like some smart comprehension here. What you would normally do it for an if-else statement, you just do it on a one-liner. You use this a lot using JavaScript. I'm sure if you guys have familiarship with, if you're familiar with JavaScript, you've probably done it before. It's just that for me, I started with Python first, so it was very confusing for me to understand this. But yeah, so that takes care of the SAT data.py. Hopefully that made it easier to understand. I think for the most part, I think you guys try to do most of your work in the save as CSV method. And I think that just came from not really understanding what the README was saying. And I do apologize for that. If it's not clear enough, let me know if stuff doesn't click how it should because it's poorly written. We can adapt this and update it. But are there any questions up to this point? Did everyone understand like every step that we went through covering the SAT data? You're going to use CSV files for one of your first assessments. I don't know what I was doing. I was doing something when it was being taught, and I completely forgot, or I didn't even learn how to properly open the CSV file. I didn't even know it got taught. I was busy with something, and then I had to use it for the assessment, and I was struggling. All right, so make sure you guys understand CSV files and how to manipulate them, and then how they're used, like in the init method. I feel like at first glance it might seem a little intimidating because you're like, how am I supposed to use this in init method? I thought it only takes self._data members, but no, you can do all this in the init method and it'll still work, right? It'll still do what it wants, what it has to do. No question whatsoever before we're done for the day. All right, awesome. I'll stay here for another 5 minutes, and if anybody has any questions, but the rest of you guys are good to go for the evening. Y'all have a good night.